As anybody else comes in, you just let them in.
Welcome, everybody, to the Synapse Philosophy Group. I'm your host, Dr. Haig, John, and I've got John McAtamney with me tonight, and I'm so happy. I hope I got your name right. Your last name is a tough one. Good. And we've got the rest of the crew. We've had a little summer off. We're on D.D. Palmer's 1910 book, The Chiropractor's Adjuster. We're on page 742. We're 3/4 of the way through this book, and we have dissected it and digested it. We're going to do a little skipping around tonight, like sometimes we do. And we're going to start right at the middle of the page of 742. I'm going to read that. Your thoughts are of little value unless you intelligently use them. And I think that's a very, very important thing. And really, there is nothing without action, right? What we are saying and doing have very little to do. I think we also have to take action as well. What do you feel about that statement from D.D. Palmer right there?
Well, there's a couple things there. I know that BJ called this straight line thinking, where you can basically look at something without any preconceived ideas, and to really basically look at your thoughts and use them intelligently. You have to be very clear about things. That certainty that we talked about earlier today. So being really clear about what your thoughts are and spending time basically letting things percolate a little bit, and then listening to those particular thoughts from innate and then acting upon them. That's what Didi and BJ talked about, that the thoughts are going to come and that they require action. Otherwise, it's a wasted effort and energy.
Yeah. BJ spent most of his time writing about getting out of the educated mind and letting innate speak through us. And, that's there's a lot of wisdom in those few words right there. We can digest those and ponder them for a while. I like that. It reminds me of BJ Palmer. I read it in The Bigness of the Fellow Within, but you never know how far reaching what you think, say, or do. Thinking being the very first one of that, saying being very powerful, doing will affect the lives of millions tomorrow. And I remember Dr. Pasquale used to say, it happens today. There's no tomorrow never comes, he said. It's today. And that's how powerful we have to think about, how powerful our words are, our thoughts are, and our actions too. Thanks for sharing your insight on that.
Pasquale said something, I'm just coming to mind there when you brought it up. One of the meetings I was at, where he said that the past is gone and we can't change it. The future has not arrived yet, and it only lives in our imagination. And the present is wrapped in a big red bow. That's why it's called the present, and you have to unwrap it.
That's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It's a present. It's a gift in the moment right now. Absolutely. I'm going to read this next paragraph here. Okay. Innate and educated. Innate existed before educated. The latter is dependent on the former for existence. Each of these entities has a mind. Each has an intellect, a consciousness. Each thinks, considers, understands, reasons, feels, perceives, and wills. The knowledge and attributes of innate has been acquired through the countless ages of time, while those of educated is limited to this, our lifetime, and acquired through the nervous system. That of innate is the sum total of all life experiences. I'll just stop right there. We'll read more. But, the difference of educated to innate intelligence, educated from in utero, we know we begin to be hardwired in utero to handle the stressors coming out, but that's learned from another man or woman. All the energy outside, same thing, the schooling, it's learned from another man or woman teaching us knowledge. But innate, how would you describe innate, John?
Well, it opens up a lot of understanding.
Absolutely.
Different understanding of things. Innate, best way I've ever heard it described was Dr. Chuck Ribley. He said, we have within us this innate, this power that exists, that animates us and stirs us into life. He says, call it the soul, call it the spirit. He says, call it whatever you want. He said, it exists beyond this particular time and space, beyond the matter that we live in. It exists through the matter that we live in. It expresses intelligence through the matter. But he says that innate intelligence that we have is the same innate intelligence that flowed through Mozart, that flowed through Tesla, that flowed through Einstein, that flowed through Newton. He said Newton saw an apple fall, but he saw an apple fall a whole bunch of times. It was only when the thought flash came to him, when he saw the apple fall, that he figured out the laws of gravity and then wrote the laws of calculus to explain it. Mozart, he would see the orchestra in his mind before he would actually be able to write it. We have within us all of this genius, which BJ talked about, this genius that lives within inside us. And their biggest problem is to get educated out of the way, which is what BJ wrote about, so that the innate intelligence, this genius that lives inside us, can find a way to express itself.
Yeah. I mean, the expression of innate within, that's what chiropractors do. And so we should know a little bit about it. And Dee Dee, so many times through here, talks about innate intelligence, helps us understand the spirit. That's the spirit within each person. And, you know, in part and parcel of being a portion of God expressing within matter. And that's where it's amazing reading Dee Dee Palmer talk about those things. There are a couple of innate chapters in here, and we formed a lot of our innate adjusting seminar, based on what Dee Dee was talking about with nerve tracing and innate intelligence. And to understand our do we want to say a profession or gift or service of chiropractic, we need to know about this human a lot more than the physical nature, and the spiritual nature being a big portion of that. So Dee Dee spends a lot of time in those things. And do we get that now? Do we get it in chiropractic school or in anybody's schooling?
There's a couple of schools they talk about it in, but not many.
You know, it's even so, you know, I've asked some different presidents over the years, the decades, and you know, it's hard to teach the esoteric, right? And it's not the job of the school being, that's what I got. The answer was of teaching religion. And I said, it's not religion. We're talking about a major portion of chiropractic philosophy and understanding. So we got a little fight back about it.
We talked about that before a little bit earlier today. And the idea is that within the 5 branches of philosophy, metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, aesthetics, and metaphysics, ethics, epistemology, ethics, and politics. The biggest problem with the schools is they have taken on the job of not teaching chiropractors, but basically getting their students to pass boards.
Yeah.
Because that's their main job, get you to pass the boards. I don't want to get into politics about it, but the idea is that very simply, what we're going through in these books is basic metaphysics and epistemology, the ethics about why he said, because what was he driven by? Why 2 men sitting at the same table doing the same job that lived in the same workhouse, one got sick and one didn't. What was the difference? It's the inside that made the difference. Something about that person inside. One got sick, one didn't. So he says it's not outside the environment. He talked about disease is no longer an enemy. And most of allopathy is that the disease is an enemy. You have to fight against it. You know, Barge talked about a life without fear. When you understand this idea of innate intelligence and how much that is the product and cause of, and how it connects you to a universal intelligence, which is unlimited. Learning to get that understanding, it allows you to live life without fear, because you realize that what is living within inside you is stronger than what the environment is presenting it to us. I'm not saying you can't be hit by a bus and that there's not pathological, viruses and bacteria, but the human body is not designed to be healthy. The human body is designed to survive. And that's the key thing. The innate intelligence is about the survival of the body as much as possible. That's why when people get a fever, they feel like crap. But what is the fever doing? It's allowing them to survive. When people get ptomaine poisoning and they throw it up, they think that the symptoms are the disease. But what are they doing? The innate intelligence is purging things from their body. When you understand how innate works and become clear about how the body's going to respond to that innate, it gives us a completely different understanding of what health is. Health is not the absence of symptoms, but the actual performance of normal physiology, which is what Didi talked about. He said, know what normal is, and you'll understand what abnormal is. Right? What did he say? The word diseases. And it's funny because I just did something about this in a program I did. Didi's definition of disease no longer applies, but in chiropractic it was too much or too little functionating. Nerves that were too hot or too slack. The idea of too much functionating or not enough functionating was disease. Anything different than normal. And the innate intelligence was responsible for keeping things in the normal physiology. The educated is trying to understand things, but sometimes we mess it up. Oh, I'm throwing up, I'm sick. No, that's an expression of health. Oh, I have a fever. No, that's not sick. You have an expression of health.
Yeah. And that programming goes way back. It's not, from the alchemists, and even just finding the potion to stop you from throwing up or whatever it might be. You're inhibiting innate intelligence, right? Yeah, there you go. Yeah. You're inhibiting innate, which we talked about earlier today, actually just on our podcast we did together. Everybody listen to that one on interviews. But what you're doing is causing another irritant. Now the body's got to deal with this and deal with that virus or bacteria, whatever it needs to be. So adding something else doesn't always make things better. Actually, sometimes makes it worse. And since Pasteur said we've got invaders coming at us, we've been in a pasteurization of human health in reality.
People do understand it, because I'll
Sure.
ask this question in my office. If your dog gets sick, what do they stop doing? They stop eating. What else do they do? They lay around. They don't run around. They just lay there. What are they doing? They're conserving energy, right? If you had a fish tank and the fish all turned upside down, you wouldn't say what's wrong with the fish. You'd say what's wrong with the water, right?
Yeah.
When we look at animals, we don't take a look at what's going on from the environment. We realize that with animals, something's happening inside that they're having to deal with. But we take a look at ourselves as if all the cause is coming from the outside, because we see ourselves separate from the world.
Well, same thing. I have 2 palm trees that are really sick out here in my yard. And I have a gardener. I go to this garden shop. Big Wave Dave started, just passed, God bless him. But it's his place, and I trust everybody in there. The first thing that they told me, listen, we got to get that plant stronger so it can fight that invader itself, right? And so we got all this, we're feeding the plant. I can't adjust it. It doesn't have an atlas, but we're getting that plant stronger. In horticulture, we get the system stronger, right? Same thing in the body. We get the body stronger. The body fights dis-ease, right? When the body is not in ease, it fights the invader. The immune system does something amazing. Sometimes we feel terrible, night sweats, we get fevers and all kinds of things. All of that is your body working towards adaptation, trying to adapt to what is happening to it, and then also keeping those from multiplying. That's why our fever goes up. We're writing papers right now for peer review about fever, and I want to have a book by 2026, like a definitive guide to understand fevers, right? But one of the things we've come across is a long-term low-grade fever is very likely virus, right? Shorter-term bacteria kills it, but it's not killing the bug. It's keeping them from reproducing. So those the reproduction changes, the immune system doesn't actually have to work as hard. And I think that's truly amazing, but we think about it in the opposite way. We've been and I say I grew up in a medical family. It's not hard to do in today's society. But in reality, my father always was the hardest thing to do is get a pill out of him. Let's see how your body adapts first. If you're near dead, maybe we'll intervene. That's all he had, right? So the body's always working towards adaptation. Sometimes it doesn't feel so great.
That's why people study the green books, because learning to understand. You just brought up the whole idea of fever and how fever response different to viruses and bacteria.
Yeah.
An innate internal adaptation to an outside physical stress, that is innate, responding and adapting the body. Because what does chiropractic talk about? Adapting the body to the environment rather than changing the environment to suit the body.
There you go.
That's the power of chiropractic.
You know, in so few words, and it's profound. That's really wisdom. And what we're teaching, even in our classes, we have, we talked about having class, our orientations and things, is really giving people that hope that you are powerful. And that doesn't change. You might have a lot of things the body's trying to work on, but until you're under the soil, innate is always working towards your betterment, not to your detriment. And so you always have that team player of innate intelligence that is working for you to get better. And it never takes a break. It never takes a nap. It doesn't need to eat, right? We got to use that for our fleshy body. It needs the food. But absolutely amazing. I'm going to read this next paragraph. All right. The attributes of the innate mind are directed through the sympathetic nervous system to the upbuilding of the physical body, the sum total of all the processes known as metabolism, while that of educated is directed towards our environments. Innate is not the mind any more than the body is the mind. There is a spiritual mind. I like this part. And a physical mind. The former is everlasting. The latter exists during life. The mind of the spirit is augmented by the experience of the physical mind. What do you think he's talking about there?
This is outside the boundaries of this book, but the
Okay.
idea is that, and I'm going to talk about a little stuff Sigafus taught. We have, through our educated mind, the ability to access the fourth dimension. We have the ability to call forward and imagine and create energies from the fourth dimension. And if we can generate enough emotional energy into that, it's the innate mind that powers it, but it is the educated mind that directs it. And that is one of the ways we can manifest. So we can manifest health, we can manifest disease, because where your attention goes, your energy flows. So if your educated mind is filled with health, wealth, and abundance, the educated will direct that's going to generate the force. And then the innate mind, which is the more powerful of the two, and the emotional mind as well, that all comes together, and that's what you become magnetized to. If you're negative about things and your educated mind is full of negativity and worry and fear and doubt, then that is what you will magnetize to, and that's what you will draw to you. And through the interaction of the innate and the educated mind, you create the present that you live in. What do we start off about? This present is the only thing that we have available to us. It's wrapped in a big bow. That educated innate brings us into our experience and allows the reality to unfold in front of us, right? There's an old idea is if the tree falls in the forest and there's nobody there to hear it, is there any sound, right? We know from the double slit experiment that if we expect it to act as a wave, it's a wave. If we expect it to act as a particle, it's a particle. The interaction of the innate and the educated mind has an influence on the cosmic world.
Absolutely. And, the outcome of an experiment is based on the expectation of the observer, right? And that's where, BJ did such wonderful research, and why, if, he would switch out researchers so he had fresh minds in there. And, even what you're saying, BJ, manifestation, Sigafus was my mentor too. We talked a lot about the fourth dimension, and I read it now that we have a concept of those things. I see it so much more in DD and BJ's writing, of really giving us that, hey, you are what you're thinking about. You're educated, you're innate, you're going to create that in your environment. What you think, say, or do will change the lives of millions tomorrow, right? All these little bits of innuendo, all those, what do you call epigrams, really are to get our mind straight. We create our own reality. And we also teach that, we should teach that to our people. And we talk about that in our office. We talk about it in our classes. We do it advanced classes, that if you think you're sick, you're going to be sick. And, my friend's grandmother, I remember she was the sickest lady every day. Oh, this is the worst thing ever. I feel terrible. She lived to 99 years old. And, she was really healthy as a bodybuilder. But she always in her mind was, she was thinking herself being sick. And she lived her life that way, where she could have lived, hey, I'm really well, I'm much happier, instead of having a mindset of being sick.
Well, the implication for me with this is I will tell people on the report of findings, I can lay out the perfect plan for you. You can be 100% committed. You can do everything I tell you. If you do not expect to get better, nothing you do or I do will make any difference. You have to want to and expect to get better. I will help you with that, and I will remind you of that possibility. So as long as you do everything you're supposed to, stay consistent. I'll do my job, you do your job. But without a doubt, you expect yourself to be better. And once you believe that, you will start to experience it.
Well, that's a really, really good point. And what you're doing is deprogramming from the garbage. And so, this is a team effort. How many people come in and they want you just to fix me,
Do me, fix me.
do it. Are we done? Hey, fix me. And Doc, and I, we correct him. Hey, your body's doing the work. I move the bone. God does the healing. And well, yeah, I would say, oh yeah, you say that. Just fix me. I'm like, all right, let's get you adjusted at least. How many times can you say it in a day, right? But ultimately, it's not our job. And it's an inside job. Pasquale used to say as well, it's all an inside job. I just gave my associate actually to read the book, The Fourth Dimension, that Sigafus gave me. Reverend Cho, he's the one that wrote that. There's volume 1 and 2.
Yep.
I recommend that to everyone, really. And and as
Got
a
to get a
man
concept of it. You got to get a concept, because that's
Yeah.
where our mind really exists.
Yeah, it gives a framework. And those other things where you're talking about visualizing too, of creating that reality that we want to be in. And this summer we've taken weeks off. I've only worked in the mornings for a lot of this summer, and enjoyed a great summer with my family. It was a fantastic summer. But hey, I've been out of the office a lot. So what's the first thing we did is we sat down as a team and we visualized as the team with the associate. My wife, my 2 children actually were there. They're 9 and 11, excuse me. And my CA and associate. And we took the first moments from at 8 a.m. and just visualize the people that we can help. And we prayed and said, bring us the people we can help. And, without having to go out and do a screening, in reality, we had numbers that were double that what they were the week before. And because we saw the people coming, we saw them receiving service, we saw them leaving well and healthy, vibrant, their lives better, everything improving in their lives. We see that happen before they even walk in the door, right?
One of the most powerful examples of this level of manifestation and controlling your educated mind that I've ever seen or talked about or heard about was Dr. Ernie Landy. He was one of the principals of New Beginnings for years before he passed away.
Yeah.
He would practice in New City. He was the doc that took over Reggie Gold's office in New City, or Spring Valley. And Ernie would see 150 people in the morning before he opened the doors. He would go through in his mind and is using the tables, call it play acting, call it whatever you want, role playing, whatever. He would actually see 150 people in the morning before he even opened the doors to see the first person. And that's one of the reasons he said he saw the volume that he saw for so many years.
Sigafus said the same thing. He was in a town of 1,200 people in rural Pennsylvania and seeing 2,000 people a week. And, and you talk to him, he said, yeah, I mean, this was, and, Patsy was there. It was just he and her, from what I understand.
Yep.
And seeing thousands of people a week. And it came from manifesting, seeing it, visualizing it, speaking it into existence, and commanding it to happen. And I think that's one of the things that we lose, that we think everything is, a social media post, the whole world's going to come to see us. We're attached to these slim little boxes that are programming us, where ultimately, like I say, it's an inside job. We're projecting it from the above down and the inside out. I always feel it comes through us and is magnified through our heart, projected out into the universe. And, Pasquale also used to say, be careful what you wish for. And Sig would say it in a similar way, is ask for what you want and not what you don't want.
Well, what do you start with? Your thoughts are of little value unless you intelligently use them. That's the whole idea. Use your thoughts intelligently, guide them, make sure you're in control of the thoughts.
We've talked about some of the greats, the juggernauts in chiropractic. And, I used to hang out with Pasquale before we'd go to New Beginnings, and before he used to do his special meetings. He'd spend weeks and months and researching and really looking up every word. Where does the word root originate from? I want to understand this at a level of where the original writer, of what they truly meant, what was going on in this. And words are so powerful. So educating ourselves and getting involved in chiropractic itself. So we have a lot of students from Europe that get onto this podcast, a lot in Mexico, Brazil. And, there are different time zones. Mexico and Brazil, are close time zones. They come on sometimes. But, a lot of the things of getting out of school, how do we apply these principles? So I'll ask you, John, all the work that you've obviously got a good background in our philosophy and our history and all those things, very important. How would you say that is meaningful? And we've talked about it already today, in practice, making it practical, not just having this wisdom or knowledge, but making it practical.
It all comes down to one particular word: certainty.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be certain, not arrogantly certain, but confidently certain. Because when you are certain and you understand and you know that you know that you know, you are able to speak with authority without having to yell at people or berate them. You become the expert. So it doesn't matter who walks in your office. It could be a housewife, an executive, a medical doctor. No one knows more about chiropractic than you do.
Yeah.
And you should have no fear, no lack of confidence in speaking to someone about what chiropractic is, how it can help them, and what they need to commit to for it to be able to work. So when you basically work up your care plans, if you're not certain about what you're going to do and what your outcomes are, because you truly understand chiropractic and where you're going with it, then your care plan, it becomes a sales job rather than just a presentation. So all of practice, whether it is speaking to someone at a screening, standing in front of a room and giving a lecture, meeting someone on a knee in a consultation, giving a report of findings, doing a re-exam, even your initial exam, all that is based upon your certainty and what your goal is, which is determined by the level of certainty you have in your philosophy, science, and art.
Absolutely. And that resonates through every word. When you know what you know, you don't have to say very much. The wisdom comes through you and people feel it. They just want what you have. Absolutely. Doc, thanks for sharing. We've had an awesome night. I've got a lot out. We read three paragraphs and a sentence, and I literally feel like my life is better off than it was 30 minutes ago, because I got to share a moment with you.
Glad to share the time with you, Haig.
Yeah,
I had such a good time today. I said I'm getting on the Synapse call tonight, so
I'm stoked. I am too, man. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you. Love and appreciate you, brother. I'll see you in October for sure, and probably quite a bit more before then. All right.
All right, man. Take it easy, bud.
Good night.
Good night.